The game is unfair. The entire system is rigged. And yeah, there are people out here that are playing with cheat codes. There are people that are born into money. There are people who have connections. And there are people who have opportunities that you could never even get the chance to apply for. That's real. Those people are out there. There's no denying that. But even though everything is still unfair, you have an obligation. You still have to win. The hard truth is that the world doesn't reward those who complain the most about the system. It rewards the people who end up adapting to the system. So the first thing that you have to understand is personal accountability. Because if you don't take responsibility for your own life, then someone else will control it for you. And that's exactly how you end up getting trapped into the system. What happens when you don't take responsibility? Right? A lot of the younger generation, everyone wants to say that this is kind of my generation. We don't take the responsibility. When you don't take responsibility, you end up blaming people. You start pointing the finger. And you start to explain why you can't do something. Right? There's always 1,000 excuses. And that scapegoating might make you feel good for a second, but it inevitably ends up ruining your future. I don't care how unfair the game is. If you want to win, you have to learn the rules. You have to play smarter. You have to move differently. You have to stop waiting for somebody to come in and save you. Nobody is coming to save you. And that's not pessimism, but that's power. That is your freedom. And the moment that you realize that nobody's coming to save you, something very unique ends up happening to you. You become dangerous because now you stop begging and you stop hoping and you stop wishing and you start picking up the tools to actually build something worthwhile. So yes, even though the game is rigged, the only smart thing that you can do is look at the rigged board and say, all right, I see exactly what this is. These are the rules and I'm still going to win. That's the mindset. If you don't have that mindset, inevitably, you're just going to end up mediocre and average. Because complaining doesn't change your life, but taking responsibility does change your life. And when you take full responsibility for something, you stop becoming the victim of your situations and you actually start to embrace becoming the author of your situation. So I'm here to kind of shake you guys awake. You are not responsible for the world being unfair, but you are responsible for what it is that you do next. If you have the mindset and you have the personal responsibility, right, of taking that everything is ultimately up to you, then we need to talk about the much bigger problem that does exist in the world. And the world that we're living in right now, it's not normal anymore, right? We've moved into this new stage. It's a new era. Essentially, it's a new version of capitalism. And I think that most people don't even realize that we are there. People are still living like we're in the mentality, like everything is still in 1995, as if the rules in 1995 apply here. They don't. They're not the same. The system has changed, and it changed in a way that it traps the people who don't actually see the system for what it is. Now, many of you guys are much older than I am, right? And I'm sure you can recognize that there used to be a time where you could get rich by building a real business. There used to be that time, right? And I'm not talking anything massive, right? The simple stuff. You open a store, you open up a small shop, maybe you opened up a factory and you sold something. You sold something real that the community would ultimately come and support you and buy it from you. Lighters, it could be chairs, maybe you fixed cars, you built cabinets, whatever it is, you did the work, people paid you, you took a profit, you grew as a company. But at what point do we realize that those people who are engaging in the economy that way right now are still struggling? That's the old way. And in that old way, if I gave you $1 million, your first thought would be, I'm not going to put this into the stock market. It would say, let me open up something, right? I'm going to build something. I'm going to create a company because that game rewarded production at the time. It didn't reward your effort, right? It rewarded your efforts. You were able to trade your time for opportunity. It rewarded your creation. You created something. But that version of capitalism is dying. And something else replaced it. Something probably much more dangerous and unfair. But this is a version of capitalism where the easiest way to make money is not by building a business. It's by owning assets. That's where we are in society right now. It's by taking money and turning it into more money without actually producing anything. And people want to look at my generation and say, well, nobody wants to work. Do you ever sit there and wonder why that is? It's because we're looking at the system and we're saying, I'd rather own the system than be working inside of it. And you can really see that this is not just the perspective of my generation, but it's really everywhere that you look. The rich guy was the owner of the factory, right? It was the guy who got rich by building a big business. But now the rich guy is the one who owns the stock. The rich guy is the one who owns the real estate. He's the one that owns the asset. He owns the game. And what do you think that cascading effect did to that average person when that system shifted like that? What do you think happens to the kids who are starting out in life with nothing when the rules rewarded people who already have money? It becomes impossible to climb that ladder of success because this new version of capitalism, it doesn't reward hard work the same way that it used to. It actually rewards ownership. It rewards people who already have the capital. It rewards the investors, the people with the assets. And this is a hard part that a lot of people don't want to admit, but a lot of young people today are not lazy. They're not lazy. They're not weak. They're not stupid. They're living in an economy where that ladder is getting pulled out from underneath them. They're living in a world where the effort alone it's not enough. Because inflation is moving faster than your hourly wage. The price of living is moving faster than it rises. The value of your money is dropping while the cost of everything is doubling. So yeah, they could work harder, but they're still going to feel like they're losing ground. They simply can't keep up anymore. And when you live in that kind of world, many young men and women start to feel hopeless and they start to feel angry and they start to feel like nothing that they do matters because the system is always one step ahead of you. And that's really what's going on right now. It's not just in their heads. And this is the version of where we are in the economy. And ultimately, it kind of separates us into two groups, right? The people who own and the people who rent. It's the people who invest and the people who work until they're tired. The people whose money grows while they're sleeping and the people who work all day just to survive and tread water. And this is why the game feels more rigged than it ever has. Because it is rigged. And it's not rigged in like in a conspiratorial aspect, but it's rigged in a mathematical aspect. Right? Like, take a look at everything that's going on around you. This is why I feel like so many people are waking up and saying, hold on, why am I working so hard and still not getting ahead? That's the mentality of people. When the system doesn't reward the young man who works every day, doesn't do drugs, he doesn't get arrested, when that young man can't afford a house, let alone a car, then ultimately he starts to ask questions. He starts to look at the system for how it is. And the answer to that question is the answer to that question is because the entire system shifted. The capitalism that we're living in right now is not the capitalism that was built for the middle class. That's gone. It's gone. It's the capitalism that builds asset owners, and everyone else who is not an asset owner, you get drained for what you have. That's it. And when you see that there's really no other aspect to that equation, the game simply isn't just unfair. The game is designed to reward money, not your efforts, not the hours you put into it. So once we accept that we're in this new world now, we really need to talk about what does it do for opportunity for the younger generations, right? What does this new world do for business? What does it do for class mobility, your ability to move up in their class? And why is it getting easier to make money from money and harder to make money from nothing? And the dangerous part about the system is that, yes, it's unfair, but it appears to look fair, right? That's the illusion of it. It still looks like you have a chance. It looks like you can work your way out of it. That hustle mentality, if you just hustle hard enough, then you're going to make it. But the truth is that the math changed. The math is ultimately what's going to trap you. We live in a world where money multiplies easier than effort. And ironically, that has massive consequences to that. So let me show you what I mean by it. If you have money, if you already have money, it's easier to turn that money into more money, right? You could buy stocks, you could buy real estate, you could buy a business, you could buy an asset. And then you could just sit there and wait. And the crazy part is that you don't even need to be smart anymore. You don't even need to be smart anymore. You just need to already be in that game, right? You don't need to have a genius plan. You don't need to be the best worker. You don't have to have the most talent. You could just move your money and your money could go work for you. So when people say things like, well, the rich are getting richer, that's not out of jealousy. That's literally how the system works right now, because money has become the machine. And if you have the machine, then it prints for you. But if you don't have any money, then, and you're starting from zero, if you're starting from nothing, then everything becomes much harder than it was 20 years ago. Because right now you're competing in a world where your effort is taxed and the ownership of assets is what's actually rewarded. So the kid who works 60 hours a week still can't get ahead because that 60 hours is not beating inflation. That 60 hours is not beating his rent. It's not beating the food prices. That 60 hours is not beating the cost of survival. Well, then that's why young people feel like it's harder. Like they feel like the harder that they work, and they ultimately will get left even further behind because money is rising faster than their labor can. Nobody wants to admit it, but that's fucking true. And it gets worse because the system doesn't just reward money, but it actually protects the money. So if you already have $1 million, your life is completely different, right? You don't take the same risks. You don't operate under the same pressure. You don't make decisions out of fear. You have the privilege of operating on offense. You get to invest. You get to wait. You get to be patient. But the person who doesn't have any money doesn't get to be patient. They don't get to wait. They don't have that time. That decision making under stress, that they're making decisions under pressure. And they're making decisions, ironically, as they're drowning in the dollar. That patience is luxury. That patience is an asset in and of itself. You can't tell a drowning man to be patient. And that's the real problem, is that the system is built like a funnel. It's actually funneling the wealth upwards. And it funnels the opportunity upwards, and it pushes all of that struggle downwards. So the person who already has money gets richer faster than everybody. Then the person who is trying to create money, that person ends up getting stuck, and they move very slow. And it brings us to probably one of the darkest conclusions in the entire conversation, is that it becomes nearly impossible for you to make your first $1 million. Nearly impossible for you to make your first $1 million. Because once you have your first million, it becomes easy to turn that 1 million into 10 million. Because once you have the capital starts working for you. So now the game isn't just about hard work. It's about getting into the asset class. It's about ownership. It's about being on the side of the system that grows, not on the side of the system that gets drained. And once you understand that, then maybe you'll start to realize why everybody feels frustrated, why the younger generation is so angry. You'll understand why nobody actually feels like the economy is doing better, even though the stock market is at an all-time high. Right? Why is that? Why do we feel like the economy is not actually doing better? It's because the wealth isn't flowing through the streets. It's not. The wealth isn't going into the hands of the regular people. It's not. The wealth is flowing upwards into the assets and the investors of people who actually own the assets. And if you don't own assets, then you don't actually feel the economy doing better. You actually feel the opposite. You feel the cost, you feel the pressure, you feel the rent, you feel the inflation, you feel the survival. That's the math, right? Young people don't want to build businesses anymore. Why is that? Entrepreneurship is essentially kind of on its last legs. Physical businesses are being crushed. The monopolies are eating up everything. And I hear that like young people, like young men are struggling because they're lazy, right? You hear the same lazy line from the older generation. Well, back in my day, we just worked harder. But they're leaving out a huge detail to that. Back in their day, that ladder still existed. That ladder was real. You could climb it. You could start small. You could build something. You can compete with others in your area. You could expand. You could grow. Even though it was hard, it was still possible. But now that ladder has missing rings. That ladder is breaking. And the reason that it's breaking is because most of the industry has been swallowed up by conglomerates, monopolies, these giant corporations that control the entire playing field. That's not just my opinion. Look around. Look around. If you want to sell anything, you're competing with Amazon. You want to open a grocery store, you compete with Walmart. You want to open something in retail, then you're competing with Target. And it's really not just those three examples, but look around. It's in everything. Every industry has a giant player now. And those giant players are growing bigger. They're smarter than you. They have lower costs. They have better supply chains. They have better technology. They have better marketing. They have teams of lawyers. And on top of that, they have unlimited funding. They could take losses for years if they want to, just to wipe out their competition. So when a young man says that he doesn't want to start a business, it's not because he's scared of work. It's not that he's scared of waking up early. He's not scared of grinding. What he's scared of is the math. Because he understands that he's going to spend years to build something that can just get undercut with a company that has infinite resources. And maybe here's a part that many people aren't paying attention to, is that this kills entrepreneurship at the root of it. Because the old world had room and it had space. It had openings. You could open a shop and the community would come and support you. You could create a local brand. You could survive. But now that market is so dominated that by the time you open up anything, somebody already owns it. Somebody already controls it. Somebody could already do it cheaper than you. So even if you work harder, you still might lose. And it's not because you didn't try, but it's because you're competing with the machine. And then they say, well, I don't understand why people don't start businesses anymore. It's because it's not the same game. The risk is way higher. The competition is way more unfair now. The runway is much shorter. The costs are higher. The rent is higher. The marketing is much harder. The customer attention is much more expensive. Everything about it is harder than it was 20 years ago. I'm not even talking about the 1960s. I'm talking within just the last 20 years. And then the moment that you think that you're actually starting to get traction in your business, you get completely crushed. So what happens? Young people don't even want to try because they don't see that lane. It's not there for them. They don't see a future in it. But what the younger generation does see is a trap. So this is why the only businesses left are the ones that already had a head start. The ones with the funding, the ones with the brand, the ones with the connections, the ones with the large distributions. Yeah, that ladder used to exist, but that ladder at least it gave normal people a chance. Not anymore. That ladder is gone. Once that ladder disappears, you don't just lose opportunity in America. You end up losing hope in the American dream. You lose hope in that class mobility, that you can start from where you are and you can change your life. Because now people are looking at life and they're realizing that I can't outwork these monopolies. I can't out-hustle a corporation with infinite money. I can't compete with the system that doesn't allow competition. So what happens? The young people stop building. They stop creating. The scariest part is that they stop believing. And this is where that desperation really starts to rise, because when that ladder is gone, the only thing left is to escape the room. Because when people can't build, when people can't climb, when people can't catch up, then they start to do something else. They stop trying to win slowly, and then they start trying to win instantly. That's where the meme coins come from. That's where the gambling comes from. That's where your prediction market comes from. That's where your Hail Marys come from. And the mindset of the average young man drastically changes. Did you realize that people don't gamble because they're dumb? Sit there and think about that for a second. People don't gamble because they're dumb. They don't. People gamble because they feel trapped. They gamble because they don't see a real path out anymore. They gamble because the hope is dying. And when the hope dies, that risk, it starts to look like logic. Because now what you're actually witnessing is that young people aren't playing to get ahead. They're playing to escape. They're not playing in the long game anymore because they feel like the long game doesn't work out. So they stop saying, I'm going to go grind for 20 years and then I'll buy a house. No. What they really start saying is, I got to hit a 5-leg parlay. And this is where that meme coin era comes from. This is where that online casino era comes from. This is where the I'm all in mentality comes from. It's not because these people are lazy. It's because they most certainly, it's not even because they don't, it's not even because they don't understand money, but it's because they understand that the system is not built for them. They look at their paychecks and it doesn't inspire them. It doesn't motivate them. It doesn't do anything for them except make them angry because they're realizing something. They're realizing that this is not building me a future. This is barely keeping me alive. So they look in the world and they say, hold on. If I do the right thing, if I stay out of trouble, if I work hard, if I don't get arrested, if I don't do drugs, if I don't mess up my life, what do I get? And the honest answer is not much. It's not much. So that's when that psychology breaks. That's when the risk-taking really starts to take into effect. Because now the young man starts thinking, $10,000 does not change my life. $20,000 doesn't change my life. $50,000 doesn't change my life. Because he's not thinking about surviving for the next 8 months. What he's really thinking about is freedom. He's thinking about ownership. He's thinking about escaping the system that has entrapped him. So in his mind, $10,000 is basically zero. It's basically the same thing. Because neither one of them buys him the life that he actually wants. Neither one of those buys him the life that his father was able to afford. So he turns around and he says, I might as well gamble it. Because that young man ends up feeling cornered. He feels entrapped. So this is why you see so many young men throwing their money at anything that really moves. Anything that promises a shortcut. Anything that promises a miracle. Any coin, any bet, any casino, any prediction. And it's not because... Do you realize that they're not looking for a 10% return? Are you kidding me? They're looking for the door out of the room. And once an entire generation decides that that long-term game is completely broken, they don't want your good advice anymore. Because what worked for you doesn't work for me anymore. What they want is a winning ticket. And the saddest part is that the system actually encourages that thinking. The system is already gambling. Wall Street's gambling. Governments are gambling. The banks are gambling. They print money like there's no tomorrow. They pump the markets, they manipulate the prices, and then they turn around and they tell the average person, you need to be responsible. We'll protect your money for you. Are you sure you want to do that? That's kind of high risk. Are you kidding me? Are you sure? So the young man looks at that hypocrisy and he says, all right, if the people at the top are gambling with trillions of dollars, then why would I play safe with $10,000? Well, that's where we are right now. The world feels chaotic because this really isn't just about finances anymore. It's really psychological. It's a generation that has lost patience because patience only works when the system actually rewards the patience. So you see a lot of young people frustrated more now than ever. You can't look at a young person gambling and say, well, that guy's stupid, right? They're reckless. They deserve to lose. Because what the older generation doesn't understand is that young man didn't start gambling in the first place. The system was the first one gambling. And that system is broken. And when that system breaks, then the people inside of it start acting like it. They start acting like the system itself. That's how corruption ends up spreading. And on top of that lie... And on top of that, there's a lie that everybody was sold, right? It's a lie that still gets pushed to this day, even though it's not true anymore. And this is the part that really gets me mad. Because on top of all of this, on top of the inflation, on top of the monopolies, on top of the asset owners winning, on top of the young people feeling trapped, there's still one thing that's being pushed as if it is the truth. And it's a lie. It's a lie that you were sold your whole life. It's a lie that they're still pushing in the public schools. It's a lie that they're still pushing in your workplace. It's a lie that they still push on TV. And this is it. This is the lie. If you work hard, you will become successful. That's the lie. Now, I'm not saying that most certainly working hard doesn't equate to success, right? Hard work does matter. Discipline matters. Showing up matters, being consistent matters, but let's be honest. That sentence used to be true because the game used to reward effort. But now, in this new version of the economy, hard work itself doesn't guarantee success anymore. You don't even have the option. There's no opportunity for you. But the hard work, it does guarantee something. It guarantees your exhaustion. It guarantees stress. It guarantees that you're going to be busy. Hard work is going to guarantee that you'll probably be so busy making your boss rich that by the time you get home, you're so tired, you don't have enough hard work left in you to go start your own goals and then be success. And on top of that, the success isn't even guaranteed. So this is why my generation is different, because the young people don't hear advice. We test the advice, right? My generation will try it. They'll actually do what they're told. They'll go to school, they'll get a degree, they'll get jobs, they'll work full time, they'll avoid trouble, they'll stay clean, they'll do the right thing. And then they look around and they realize that they still can't afford a life that they were promised. The life that their fathers were able to purchase. They can't buy a house, they can't start a family, they can't build a savings account that actually amounts to anything, they can't get ahead. So then they start to ask themselves, if I'm doing everything right, then why am I still losing? And the older generation wants to blame them. They say that you're lazy, you don't work hard enough, you don't want it bad enough. No, that's not what it is. It's not laziness. This is what it is it's awareness. The younger generation is waking up. And they're realizing the difference between working hard and getting rewarded, because those things are not connected anymore like they used to be. They're not. That's the lie. That's the lie. The lie is that effort does not equal outcome anymore. And most certainly in this new system, effort does not equal outcome. It most certainly doesn't. But the ownership equals outcome. The assets equal outcome. The capital equals outcome. So that's why this game feels evil, right? Because it still pretends that it's fair. It pretends that it's based on hard work. But who does that benefit? It most certainly doesn't benefit the guy sweating. No, it only benefits the guy that actually put the risk and the investments into it. It pretends that you could still climb that ladder. But that ladder's broken. We already discussed that. So they keep repeating that lie and basically telling young people to just keep running, just keep grinding, just keep working. That is, I don't care what it is. That's the biggest word before a lie. Just. Oh, it's just 2 weeks. It's just. You're lying. But even if you keep working towards it, that finish line keeps getting pushed further and further away from you. It doesn't work anymore. Even the money's getting weaker every year, right? Even if the prices are raising faster than your wages, it's gone. Hard work doesn't do it anymore. It doesn't do it anymore. Young people started to realize something. Yes, the hard work makes you tired, but it most certainly doesn't make you rich. And when you realize that, then we end up seeing a large majority of young men and women that no longer believe in the system anymore. They stop trusting the institutions. They stop respecting the old advice. They stop listening to the people who benefited from the old world while pretending that the new world, that old world still exists. These people don't even realize that we're in a completely different world right now. Once that belief dies, then the real danger actually starts to set in. Because when people stop believing in the rules, they stop respecting the rules. And when millions of people stop believing in society, then society itself starts to crack. That's the truth. If you understand that lie that's been told to you all of your life, then inevitably you're going to understand that you're going to understand why investing becomes the last lane. It's the last lane for you. Because the only way to beat the system that rewards ownership is to start owning stuff. Investing is the last lane because savings won't do it. Working harder won't do it. The only way out is to put your money to work. When that system rewards ownership, investing is not optional anymore. Investing is not a hobby. It's not a luxury. It's not something that only the rich can do. For this generation, investing is survival because you'll never save your way out anymore. That's the part that the older generation can't seem to understand. They say just save your money, just budget your money, just work the overtime. But what they don't realize is that the savings doesn't beat inflation. Savings doesn't beat asset growth. The savings don't beat a system that keeps printing the money. So what does that mean? It means that the value of your dollar is shrinking over time. It means that you still get left behind because inflation doesn't care about how many hours you worked this week. It doesn't care about your effort. It doesn't care if you're tired. Inflation eats everything around it, and it keeps eating. So now your only option becomes simple, and they're not really comfortable options. Option 1, you save what you can. You work your job. You struggle for years. You do everything responsible. And then one day you wake up and realize you're older, and the savings that you've built for yourself, it's not enough anymore because that goalpost kept moving again and again and again. Option 2 is really the only option that I think that you should be taking, because this is probably the only option that still can create class mobility. And the truth is that the system rewards ownership, then owning the assets is the only way out. People aren't chasing investments because they're greedy. People aren't chasing investments because, they're trying to. No, they're chasing investments because they feel trapped. They're trying to beat the system. They're trying to beat inflation. They're trying to beat the rent increases. They're trying to beat a future where everything costs more and more and their paycheck stays exactly the same. So what do? They put their money in assets. They put their money in stocks. They put their money in real estate. They put their money into digital assets. They do anything that they can to avoid holding cash, because cash in this system is like holding ice in your hand. It melts and you can't stop it from melting. You can only move it into something that holds its shape. And that's really what investing is. It's not about trying to get rich, right? And this is why people like us, we get passionate about it. It's because we're watching a generation wake up. This is a generation that finally understands that working harder, it's not enough. Even if you and your wife work 60 hours a week, it's not enough. You're slaves. Don't you get it? It's not enough. Saving is not enough. Being responsible is not enough. The only real path left is for you to put your money to work for you, because if you don't, then the system is going to work against you. And if investing is truly the last lane, then people are going to ask, well, what do I invest into? And that's where my belief of digital assets come into this conversation, because digital assets aren't just an investment, right? They may be the final wealth opportunity left for people who were not born into a higher class. And truthfully, throughout my efforts along the years, this is the part that people either get it or they don't get it, right? Because digital assets aren't just an investment for a lot of people. Digital assets feels like the final door left. It's the only option left for these people. And the reason is pretty simple. Because most people today already missed out on the old doors, right? Think about it. Real estate used to be a big wealth builder. Buying property used to be something that normal people could do. It was obtainable. Now the prices are insane. The interest rates are insane. The down payments are huge. And by the time a young person tries to buy a home, they're competing with investors. They're competing with corporations. They're competing with rental giants. People who already have capital. So that door feels closed. Stocks, right? Stocks. That used to be the next big door. But the stock market is expensive right now. It's inflated. And if you're broke, you can't just throw $100 a week into a stock and pretend like it's going to change your life anytime soon. That's not how that works. Because you're not competing with average people anymore. You're competing with funds. You're competing with institutions. You're competing with people who move billions of dollars in one click. So again, that door feels closed. And then there's businesses, your entrepreneurship. But we already covered that. Monopolies have eaten that ladder. The cost of starting something is high. The risk is way too high. The chance of survival long term is lower than most people want to admit. So for a lot of young people, that door feels like a trap. So now what? Your brain starts to look for something else. Something new, something early, something that still has room to run. Because where a normal person can feel like they can get in before it becomes fully controlled and engulfed, then that's an opportunity for us, isn't it? And that's why I push for digital assets, because digital assets is the first time in history where the little guy can get in before the big guy. It's the first time in a very long time where regular people felt like they have an early access to something. Because for once, you didn't need a bank to give you permission to jump in. You didn't need a hedge fund to invite you. You didn't need to be born into money. You didn't need to know the right people. You could buy it from your phone. You can hold it for yourself, self-custody it. You can move it yourself. You could become your own custodian. You could become your own bank. You can earn passive yield farming for yourself. And I think that idea is powerful. It's powerful because it's the opposite of the trapped system, right? That's the opposing force to it. And that's why I'm telling you that digital assets are not just coins. It's not just about the charts. They represent really an entire generation, not even just young, but us in this particular moment in time, trying to find ownership in a world that ends up inevitably blocking your ownership. They don't want you to own nothing. So to some degree, yes, it is about money, but it's also about feeling in control. It's about having hope. It's really about having hope. It's a feeling that, wait, I might actually have a chance. Now, I need to be honest, okay? Digital assets are risky. They're risky. They're very volatile, right? There's a lot of scams going on. There's manipulation. There's a lot of emotion that is tied into this. There's garbage everywhere. But even with all of that, the digital assets represent something that most markets don't actually represent anymore. They represent a new asset class that is not fully owned yet, not fully controlled yet. Young people, we understand that the ladder is breaking. We understand that the money is melting. We understand that the savings is pointless. We understand that entrepreneurship is much harder than it was 20 years ago. And we look at digital assets and we say, this might be my last door. But still, even within this last door, you may choose to walk through it. And then we ultimately have to still talk about discipline. We have to talk about strategy. We have to talk about the difference between investing and gambling. Because if this is truly the last door, then you don't walk through it like you're walking into a casino. You sit down and you play as if you have a plan. This is where your future gets decided because you actually understand that digital assets might be your last chance. It might be one of the last doors that is left for you. But you can't walk through that door like an idiot. You can't walk through that door like a gambler. You can't treat this like a casino because if you do, you're going to lose the last lane, the last opportunity that you have left. And you're going to be even angrier because now you're not just mad at the market. You're not just mad at the system. You're going to be mad at yourself. So we draw a clear line, right? There's a huge difference between gambling and investing. Gambling is impatient. Gambling is chasing that dopamine. Gambling is trying to turn $500 into $50,000 in 3 days. It's buying whatever's trending. It's buying whatever a random influencer is yelling about. Gambling's entering late. It's panic selling. It's revenge trading. It's over leveraging. It's going all in. Gambling has one goal. Escape. Escape. But investing is very different. Yes, I know. Investing's boring. It's slow. It's disciplined. It's planned. It's calculated risks. It's understanding what you own. It's buying with intention. It's time. It's patience. It's not needing to be right today, but I got to be right over time. And this is why many people end up losing because they don't actually want wealth. What they want is a fucking miracle. They want proof. They want overnight success. But wealth doesn't come overnight. It comes from positioning, from strategy, from consistency. So if you are serious about digital assets, then you need to stop acting like it's all about the charts. Stop acting like it's all about the tokens. Stop acting like it's I hope this pumps tonight. Because if that's how you're playing it, then you're not investing, you're gambling. And inevitably, gambling turns that last door into your last trap. You become entrapped by debt. You become a slave to the system. So what does investing actually look like for a beginner? Well, I think you pick an asset that you actually understand. You focus on the utility. You focus on the infrastructure. You stop chasing the hype. You stop chasing the narratives. You stop chasing the quick pump and dumps. You buy slowly. You accumulate. You build positions. You think long term. You learn the system that you're investing into. You learn why it exists. You learn what problem does it solve. And most importantly, I think you learn stoicism. You learn how to sit still. That emotional discipline. Because the hardest skill in investing is not buying something. The hardest skill is holding something. It is. Holding through the fear, holding through the manipulation, holding through the doubt, holding through the chaos. That's why investing is not for emotional people. If you're emotional, you have no place to be here. And I really don't mean that in a disrespectful way. But if you can't control your own emotions, then what you're going to end up doing is paying tuition to the market. And that market's tuition is very expensive. So yes, digital assets, they might be your last lane, but you still need rules. You still need structure. You still need discipline. Because if you bring that casino behavior into investing, you're going to lose everything. You're going to become another person saying crypto is a scam. No, crypto's not a scam. Your behavior was, your impatience was, your lack of discipline was. If you invest correctly and you play it like you have a plan, then digital assets become something bigger than just money. It becomes your ticket to freedom. It becomes your ticket to ownership. It becomes an escape from a system that rewards capital because now you finally actually have the capital. So even in this new world with all this chaos, even with all of this, the rigging going on, there's still one thing that determines your outcome. It's not luck. It's not the government. It's not Daddy Trump. It's not your boss. It's not your timeline. It's you. It's you. How are you going to play this game? Do you know the rules well enough? That's what it comes down to. You. And that timeline is shrinking. That timeline is inevitably shrinking much quicker than it ever has. You don't have much time. And how much long... We already see the institutions, the governments, the central bankers getting into this market right now. At what point does this market no longer become free? It becomes controlled. It becomes expensive. At what point does this market not act like every other asset class out there? At what point? Real estate is expensive. Stocks are expensive. At what point does this asset class lock out the average person?